This paper by Harvey Lovewell, presented at the Australia and New Zealand Masonic Research Council Conference in Dunedin in 2022, explores the requirement of belief in a supreme being for Masonic membership. It delves into historical and contemporary perspectives on this belief, examining its implications within Freemasonry's constitution and practices. The paper challenges traditional views, suggesting a re-evaluation of the role of religious belief in Masonic membership, and highlighting the evolving societal beliefs. It also addresses the philosophical and moral aspects of belief, urging consideration of inclusivity and moral compass over strict religious adherence. As it is quite a lengthy work, it will be presented in 2 parts. Thanks to Brother Lovewell for providing this essay and for his permission to reproduce it here.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's presentation From the Quarries, an archive of Masonic lore.
The volume of the sacred law. The Bible, referred to by Freemasons as the volume of the sacred law, is always open in lodges. Item 4 of the Constitution states in part,
"Every candidate is required to take his obligation on that book or on the volume, which is held by his particular creed, to impart sanctity of oath or promise taken upon it."
Having taken the great and solemn obligation of a Freemason, the candidate is restored to the blessing of material light. He is then told that we acknowledge 3 great, though emblematical, lights in Freemasonry. They are the volume of the sacred law, the square, and the compasses. Thus, the first and the most important revelation to the candidate in Freemasonry is to the greatest of all lights, the volume of the sacred law. Its presence, however, is no more than a symbol, a representative of all the great books of the religious teachings which have significance to their particular groups of people. In some jurisdictions, other works replace the Bible on the altar. Singapore Lodge, a lodge working under the English Constitution, uses no fewer than 6 of the volumes of the sacred law of various faiths. As one Scottish Grand Lodge authority puts it,
"The volume of the sacred law, no matter though it be our Bible or the sacred writings of the Hindu, the Zenda-Vesta of the Parsi, or the Quran of the Moslem, typifies the mind or will of the Gaotu, the great first cause, the creator and preserver of the universe, the great life-giver, that great unknown and unknowable which is manifested in his universe. It is a symbol, and a symbol only, and it is shown as supporting the other 2 symbols, the square and compasses."
At one time within my lodge, we initiated a man who was a Buddhist. When asked what volume of the sacred law he wanted to use, he said, "Any book will do. The book is not important. The promise is."
Yet 'tis now thought more expedient, only to oblige them to that religion in which all men agree, leaving their particular opinions to themselves.
Does this statement from the UGLE constitutions not say that a man's belief system is a personal belief and not one forced on him? And what is that religion that all men agree to? Could it be described as his moral compass? But then Freemasonry claims that it is not a religion. I may then ask, why do we read passages from the King James Bible when opening the lodge and in each degree? We must also realize that much of our ritual is based on biblical passages. Why? Is not the good book to be an education in the right behavior? Yes, it contains lessons in good behavior, but also some abhorrent behavior that we as Freemasons use in our ritual. Our ritual remains as that conceived by our early Christian brethren and is used no matter what other volume of the sacred law is used. Why? Is it not for our use an allegory? Is not our order based on symbols and allegory? Is that why our order has become universal and our ritual universally accepted? I ask you to ponder on these questions. Surely a promise can be made and kept by holding our heart or by vowing on our book of constitutions, or, as is done elsewhere, by placing the hand on a square. Despite the importance we, as speculative Freemasons, attach to the VSL, we are aware that the records that have come down to us do not refer to the Bible or sacred writings or whatever name it is known by as occupying a particular place in lodge ceremonial before the late 1600s. This does not mean to say that there was no religious background to the ceremonies of our Masonic forebears. The Regius manuscript is probably compiled by a Catholic priest and taken from earlier manuscripts. It refers to our duty to God and is considered a work written for Masons, as are later manuscripts, the Cook and others. It should be remembered that the first complete Bible in Britain was not printed until 1526, and only 50 years later would not have been widely available nor able to be read by most people. Male illiteracy at that time was close to 90%, and in 1717 it was still around 40%, as well as the inability to sign or write their name. What is an oath or vow? Every candidate is required to take an obligation on that book or on the volume which is held by his creed to impart sanctity to an oath or a promise taken upon it. So how do we define an oath?
A call upon a revered person or thing to witness one's determination to speak the truth, to keep a promise, etc., to testify upon oath. A statement or promise strengthened by such an appeal. A formally affirmed a solemn appeal to a deity, or to some statement or promise, accepted as an equivalent of an appeal to a deity, or to a revered person or thing. Affirmation.
It is therefore not essential to take an oath on any book. This is seen in current jurisprudence. An oath with a hand on the heart, or the Book of Constitutions, or even a physics book would suffice. Would it have the same impact? Here we would again have to look at the person's belief. I am sure that there are men out there who revere a book on physics with the same awe as those who revere a Bible. Who are believers? To quote Mark Twain,
"Faith is to believe in what you know for sure is not true."
And the anonymous author of
Faith, in its anthropological sense, is a human need and amounts to confidence or trust in a person or institution. Faith sees the invisible, believes the unbelievable, and receives the impossible.
Census results from the UK in 1983 show that 31.4% of the population had no religion. In 2010, 37% had no religion, and by 2013 this had risen to 51%, and by 2017, 53%. Other surveys show that whilst Anglican membership declined from 40.3% in 1983 to 16.3% in 2014. In 2014, 60% of British people described themselves as having no religion. These figures were taken from the census. In Australia, the 2016 census showed those ticking no religion rose from 22.6% in 2011 to 30.1% in 2016, nearly double the 16% in 2001 or the 8% in 1966. These figures show the changing nature of people's beliefs. In the UK and here in Australia and New Zealand, we have a rather large change in what people believe or have faith in. That our Freemasonry demands both a single-sex membership and a belief for a supreme being is excluding not only 50% of the population, female, but also a large percentage of non-believers of the remaining 50%, give or take.
Among all adults in Britain, only 15% consider themselves to be Anglican, compared with almost 1 in 3 at the turn of the century, according to BSA data. 9% overall identify as Catholics, 17% as other Christian, and 6% say they belong to non-Christian religions. More generally, 53%, in September 2017, of all adults describe themselves as having no religious affiliation, up from 48% in 2015. The latest figure is the highest since the BSA survey began tracking religious affiliation in 1983, when 31% said they had no religion.
A study of Generation Z, Australian youth aged 13 to 18 years, shows that 52% indicate no religion. They are now known as nuns. It is from this group that we will be seeking the Freemasons of the future. Do we think that these nuns are stupid atheists and irreligious libertines with no moral compass? I would suggest that their actions, which in the main show care for fellow humans and animals, indicate the following.
That is, to be good men and true, or men of honour and honesty.
Questions we need to ponder. Will an insistence on the belief in a supreme being accelerate Freemasonry's demise? Freemasonry is in decline, which is a fact, not a belief. Is a belief in a supreme being the only way a man can be called to be good men and true, or men of honour and honesty? Grand Orient lodges who do not demand a belief in a supreme being, whose numbers are not declining, say not so. I also agree with this sentiment. The following is a quote from a member of the Grand Orient written in the 1880s.
The Grand Orient of France, while it respects all philosophical beliefs, insists upon absolute liberty of belief. This does not mean that we banish from our lodges the belief in God. The United Grand Lodge of England, on the contrary, desires to make a belief in God in some manner compulsory. The Grand Orient of France is much more liberal, since in proclaiming the absolute liberty of belief, it permits to each one of its members the liberty to believe, or not to believe, in God, and by so doing desires to respect its members in their convictions, their doctrines, and their beliefs. I can affirm that the Grand Orient of France is neither deist, atheist, nor positivist. All philosophical conceptions are represented within its body.
I again quote the original UGLE Constitution. That is, to be good men and true, or men of honour and honesty. I in no way am suggesting that a belief in a supreme being is, or should be, a reason for not becoming a Mason. But there is, or should be, room for a man who does not have this belief. A belief in a supreme being does not necessarily make a man a good man. History has proven this otherwise, many times over. However, a man who has a high moral compass should be welcomed in our order. I ask, what real difference does a belief in a supreme being make? Should we, as men of honour and honesty, be at least honest with our thinking and apply this to our fraternity? My brothers, I ask that you consider the questions I have raised here. I think that we have to consider where we are going beyond the craft, and if there is a reason to change our direction, then at least it should be part of our discussions. For a deep dive into the history, philosophy, and traditions of Freemasonry, subscribe to From the Quarries. You will find hundreds of lectures, presentations, shorts, and other Masonic works written by Freemasons, for Freemasons. Visit FromTheQuarries.com or YouTube at From the Quarries.